Hi! I'm so excited to share this with you. This cake had a fantastic reaction on the British Girl Bakes Instagram account, so I've turned it into a full tutorial showing you how you can turn your favourite designs on wrapping paper or other flat surfaces like maybe a placemat into a cake. You can use any flat design for this, and I'm going to be using this gift bag. When you assemble your cake, make sure the layers are very straight above each other, and then frost them with a crumb coat that's very straight too, adding buttercream to fill in any indents until you have a very smooth, even surface around the cake. It doesn't matter if you can see the cake through it, this is going to be covered up, but it needs to provide an even surface that can be wrapped around. Now chill the cake in the fridge for at least an hour so that the frosting sets on the cake and will hold its shape for the next step. Meanwhile, you can prepare the buttercream for your pattern or design. This is my 4-minute buttercream, and I've put the link in the screen and in the video description. You don't have to choose the same colours as on your wrapping paper, or gift bag, or placemat, or whatever, so I'm changing mine up a bit. I'm going to apply the buttercream with piping bags fitted with a small round tip, starting with this pale peach buttercream and changing the tip out to the next bag as I finish with each colour. If you have several round tips, that's definitely more convenient, but it's not necessary. Now that my cake is chilled, I'm wrapping some acetate around the cake to measure the circumference, which is what I'll be piping the design onto. This is sold in a roll specifically for cake decorating, and it's extra tall so it covers the sides of most cakes, and I've put the link for it in the description below this video. I'm drawing a line where the acetate meets the beginning of the roll and cutting along that, but you should add an extra inch or two because once you've applied the buttercream design, this gets thicker and wraps less tightly around the cake. You should also measure the height of the cake and cut the acetate to be just slightly higher, maybe 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 centimetre. Now tape the acetate over your design, choosing the part you like best, and ideally with each element included completely within the acetate, so you don't get half a flower stopping dead where the acetate ends, and later joins onto the other side of the pattern on the cake. If your acetate comes off a roll, it will curl up in one direction, and you want to pipe onto that side, so that it later wraps itself around the cake for you. Now pipe on your design, and like I mentioned before, I like to do this colour by colour, switching the piping tip between bags for each new colour. Or you can also use disposable piping bags and cut off just a tiny bit from the end to make a hole the size you want, which works well for intricate details. Start small, and if a test squeeze shows you that the hole is too narrow, cut it a bit bigger. This side of the design is going to be pressed against the cake, so it's the bottom of the design that will be showing, the part that's now touching the acetate, so don't worry too much about how this side looks at the moment. The important thing is to try to pipe everything the same thickness, so you'll have a flat design. Bear in mind that you'll be flattening the design against the cake, so intricate details aren't going to be as sharp on the final design as they are at the moment. So sharp edges will become a bit rounded, and the shapes might get a bit distorted, which is something to think about when you're choosing the design to use for this. When you finish the design, without the background colour for now, you should use an offset spatula or a palette knife to smooth it gently, pressing the buttercream down against the acetate to fill in any air pockets. I didn't do that here, and you'll see what happens in a minute. Then put the acetate in the fridge, leaving it on the gift bag or wrapping paper, and lie it flat and let the design set for about 15 minutes before applying the background, meanwhile getting a piping bag ready with your background colour of buttercream. Now lift off the tape, pipe on the background colour around each section of the design, and because the initial design has been chilled, it will hold its shape and not blend in with the background colour. When you've outlined each section, you can use an offset spatula to fill in the rest of the background, smoothing over the whole pattern so that everything is flat and the same thickness. While you're doing this, the parts of the pattern that you put in the fridge will come back to room temperature, so they'll get soft and pliable by the time you wrap the design around the cake. By now your chilled cake will be very firm and sturdy, so you can take it out of the fridge and pick up the acetate with the design off the table or counter using an offset spatula to slide underneath and lift it, and then wrap it around the cake, starting by lining it up at the bottom of the cake, resting the bottom of the design on the cake board and then pressing it upwards against the side of the cake and letting it wrap around slowly to cover the rest of the cake. Acetate is much easier than parchment here because it's much thicker and sturdier, so the design won't wrinkle. Remember that I said to add an extra inch or two to the acetate? I didn't here, which is why there's a gap between the two ends of the acetate. Not a problem, I'll show you how to fix that in a minute. Use a fondant smoother, or you can use your hands, to press the acetate firmly against the cake, working all the way around the cake to make sure it's wrapped tightly around the cake from the top to the bottom, so that the design will be straight and flat. If you're enjoying this tutorial, please click the thumbs up button, and subscribe to my channel to see a new cake decorating tutorial every week. Then, if you have any exposed cake like I do, you can cover it up with more of the background colour of frosting, and press another piece of acetate over that part to flatten it, so that it's level with the rest of the design. Put the cake back in the fridge for an hour to set the design. When it's set, slowly peel off the acetate, leaving the pattern attached to the cake. Use a sharp knife to trim off any excess frosting off the top of the cake, so that the wrapped frosting is level with the top of the cake. You can wipe off the cake board with a paper towel if it has any smudges of frosting, and optionally, you can put more frosting on top of the cake, smoothing it out to match the colour of the frosting wrapped around the cake. Next, you'll need a metal frosting smoother. You can use an acrylic or plastic one, but metal is the most effective for this because you can dip it into hot water and dry it off, and it smooths the set frosting very easily. Go around a few times to even out any bumps from where the acetate didn't sit completely flat against the sides of the cake. And you can see that I have some air pockets in the frosting, and that's because I didn't smooth the piped buttercream onto the acetate, which would have pushed it down into those air pockets. I'll show you a solution for this in a moment. I'm piping borders around the base of my cake and the top, doing this wave style of buttercream by using a 1mm tip and piping back and forth, overlapping each previous wave by a little bit and going all the way around the cake. I cover buttercream borders in a lot of detail in my online course on 10 cake decorating techniques, and you can find out more by clicking the link in the top of the screen or in the video description below. Now I'm adding some shading to the pattern, spreading on a bit of the darker shades of buttercream onto the lighter areas, and flattening it with this little palette knife, or you can use an offset spatula. You can add some texture now if you like, leaving rough patches of buttercream on the shading, but I want this to be flat, so I'm spreading until the buttercream lies flat against the frosting. Finally, I'm adding some nonpareil sprinkles, dipping my finger in water, tapping off the excess, and then pressing it into the sprinkles so that they stick to my finger. Then I can press my finger quite firmly against the frosting on the cake, because it's chilled so it's quite hard, to transfer the sprinkles, and I'm strategically choosing the areas where there are air pockets to cover those up. And that's it! I love how versatile acetate is, and I'll be sharing more techniques like this soon. Thanks for watching! Please subscribe to my channel to see new cake decorating tutorials every week, and click the notification bell so you don't miss one.